Hello, welcome, and welcome back to the United Mates Football Podcast. Joe, my regular co-host, can't be with us on this call, so instead I'm joined by regular contributor to the podcast and writer for the website, our old friend Yoni. We do, as usual, have a special guest for today's show too, and we're both delighted to be in their company. He's the founder and host of the Total Screamers podcast, as well as being a proud Liverpool supporter, and he's also the head of media at Devon Vale FC, who play their football up in his home country of Scotland. We welcome James Simpson to the United Mates Football Podcast. Simmo, it's a pleasure to have you on the pod. Simmo is here to talk about the group stage of Euro 2020 with us. Hopefully not too sore of a subject for him after the Tartan Army's exit from the Euros. So Simmo, thanks for joining us. And how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing very well, mate. Still licking my wounds. Thanks very much for having me on. I've been really looking forward to coming on.
Absolutely. Like I said, a pleasure to have you on the show with us. I think just to rub it in a little more, I don't know if I did this intentionally or not, but I have the Croatia kit, the Czech Republic kit, and an England kit. So the only team not being represented up there from the group that Scotland and England were in is Scotland. And even the Czech kit has Barros on the back. So I don't know if that's like an extra wound given his sort of tenure at Liverpool. But Yoni, as we record, this is day one of 2 days without Euro 2020 football between the group stage and the round of 16. But of course, Yoni, you are our resident Chile fan, and the Copa America is going on. So what have you made of that? What have you made of the rise of Ben Brereton Diaz? And how are you doing yourself?
I'm doing all right. Thanks, Kai. Lovely to be on again. Ben Brereton Diaz living his best life out there. In a globalized world, he's taken an opportunity, and why not? Copa America, from what I've seen, has been very enjoyable. I've only watched a couple of games because I've been a bit saturated with football from the Euros. But there are plenty of reasons why it shouldn't be happening, plenty of reasons why it's a terrible idea, but the football itself has actually been all right, which is a bit surprising given the length of the season we've just had. But moving from chili to other kinds of food, Simmo, on your Twitter page, you recently posted a very funny picture of Steve McManaman tucking into some kind of pasty or pastry. And a lot of footballers are involved in food nowadays. You know, you've got Alessandro Del Piero with a restaurant in LA. Lucas Podolski has opened ice cream shops and kebabs in Germany. So for our icebreaker, my question to both of you, and we'll start with Kai, is what is the next footballer? Who is the next footballer who you can see getting into the restaurant game, and what are they serving up?
So if we're talking about current footballers, I reckon Arsenal's very own, and maybe there's a link with the whole Podolski thing. It seems to be like Arsenal footballers, even Willian and David Luiz, I know got into the game, but I'm going to go for Hector Bellerin. He might not be an Arsenal player for much longer. If anything, actually, I've got my fingers crossed that that's the case because his stock has fallen massively. But as far as the food world goes, he's quite a proud vegan. So I think you could probably see him maybe like behind a market stall at Borough Market, just slanging some vegan fare. I would go for that. Living out here in LA, that's like the norm is the vegan diet. So yeah, I'm going to go for Hector Bellerin on the vegan food scene.
I'm going to go for Andy Robertson, who's going to open up a roll shop in Liverpool.
That could well be the case. You know, Hector Bellerin is a great shout. Yeah, he's got lots of interests outside of football, and food could be one of them. Andy Robertson, I see as well, very humble stand on street food there. Maybe it's a fallback thing. I've gone with someone else, another Arsenal connection, Alexis Sanchez. Just he could have like a hot dog stand themed after his own dogs. Just with that sort of branding and marketing, I see that attracting wherever he ends up. He's in Italy now, if he's back in Chile, attracting lots of customers. It's a good sort of street food, football food kind of thing too.
I know it's Humber is one of the dogs, and
Atom.
Atom, okay. Yeah, who knows where he came up with those names from, but quite a mysterious guy, Alexis Sanchez, and I think we'll probably just leave that where it is because you can open Pandora's box with him. Otherwise, let's move on to the Euros, what we're here to talk about, and we're going to go through the group. So we'll start with Group A. That, of course, was the group of Italy, Wales, Switzerland, and Turkey. Simmo, I'll throw it to you. What did you make of proceedings in that group? Were there any surprises, any standouts in a good or a bad way? and the fixtures that are coming out of that group as well. Italy are going to go on to play against Austria. Wales are going to face Denmark, and even Switzerland managed as a third place team to go through. They're going to play France in the next round. So Group A, Simmo, what did you make of it?
Well, Turkey, I think, have underperformed a little bit. They've been probably the worst team in the tournament, which is good considering the country that I was supporting. Italy, I think, have played some really, really superb football, really cohesive football in terms of everybody knowing their roles. And I was on a podcast was it last week, where we were talking about Italy, and they don't have the same superstars they had, when they went on to win the World Cup and etc. I think, but they have, really, really top class players that are just really, really good at specific roles in the pitch. And I think the football they're playing as well, I don't think any team will want to play Italy. I think Wales have been pretty decent. I was speaking to a Wales fan yesterday on a podcast, and he was saying, I was said to him, it's when you look at that front four, and it's like, it's Real Madrid, Manchester United, Juventus, and it's the man that stands out for me is the Cardiff man, Kiefer Moore. I think is having a superb tournament. He's a really strong centre forward as well. But Switzerland as well, I think, are having an okay tournament. Xherdan Shaqiri having a very good tournament. He's very good for Switzerland. He always shines for Switzerland. Even when he came off against in the Wales-Switzerland game, I think when Xherdan Shaqiri came off, it was a real turner for Wales to go on and get the equaliser. But yeah, that'd be my thoughts on Group A. Yeah, for me, Turkey, the underperformance, and Italy, superb performances.
Yeah, spot on. Shaqiri, the man whose calves seem to just get bigger every time you see a new picture
his
of him.
legs they're just unhuman,
Like tree trunks, yeah. Otherwise, Turkey, Yoni, I know a few weeks back before this tournament started, us at the United Mates, we sort of got together and made some predictions. One of those things that we were predicting was who might be a dark horse, who might be like a team that ends up surprising people. And Yoni had gone for Turkey, who, as Simmo mentioned, were definitively the worst team at the tournament. 0 points, I think 1 goal for, 8 goals against. And again, as Simmo mentioned, that sort of spared Scotland that position as worst team in the tournament. So Yoni, how did you get to that with Turkey, and what did you make of Group A?
Yeah, well, thanks for bringing that up, Kai. I made other predictions which may age better than that specific one. But Turkey, to be honest, I made the prediction without having really watched them, but following their results. They won in France not so long ago. They beat the Netherlands just before the Euros in what I saw was a very exciting game with an ambitious attacking game plan. And I was so disappointed that they just showed a complete lack of that ambition in pretty much any of their games, apart from against Switzerland when they really had to go for it. Because if you look at their talent, their individual quality, they should have given a much better account of themselves. Always dubious of teams that bring back managers from 20 years ago trying to recapture some kind of magic. Like, as much as it pains me to say 2002, at least in football terms, is a long time ago. And it's a long, long time since the days of Shash and Hakan Suker and all of these other familiar names. And it seems always a little desperate when countries in particular lunge back for whatever their glory day was. But they were extremely disappointing. I don't think, a change in coach necessarily means it had to be that way for them. As with the rest of the group, I think a lot of people were sleeping on Italy just because we have certain expectations of who they are and how they play. But actually, when you think about it, they have arguably the most talented manager in the competition, at least at a club level, the most storied and successful. He's got a very good group of players, a good mix of experience and youth and hunger. And the run that they're on without defeat in, coming up to 3 years, any team going into any tournament with that kind of record is going to feel confident. And teams going up against that are going to have to dig deep to get something, or to have the belief that they can overcome that. And we'll see how they fare. They should, I think, get through pretty comfortably against Austria. We'll see what they're made of when they come up against real stern opposition, but they've been as good as anyone. I don't know what you think, Kai.
No, they've been quietly very, very impressive. Again, Mancini, has done a good job. There's certain players in their team that there's certain players in their team that you're less aware of, and even those guys are performing. Someone like Spinazzola the other night was great, and didn't know much about him going into the tournament. And then the names that you sort of have been hearing about Rumbles for like a year or so, a couple of years, have also stepped up. They've got, was it Barella, who's a very, very tidy player in midfield who I like quite a lot. Berardi, who seems to have been around forever, and like touted quite highly for a while. He's finally putting in the performances. And then, of course, they've got Ciro Immobile, who has been prolific for Lazio for a while and is finally kind of seeming like he could be the guy to, on like a fine margins level, be the one to score a goal here, a goal there. And of course, Italy, I think, along with England, are the only teams who haven't conceded a goal yet. So it might just be a goal here or a goal there that takes them through each of these rounds. But Yoni, how's about we jump onto Group B?
Sure. Yeah. Well, this one featured Belgium, Denmark, Finland, and Russia. And from those, this was one of the groups that only two teams progressed, Belgium and Denmark. One of the most eventful, for good and bad reasons, groups that we've seen the games of. Thankfully, Christian Eriksen, it does appear is okay, and he's been discharged from hospital. But really, I mean, so far anyway, beyond that, Denmark seems to be the good news story of the tournament, and they seem to have the will of everyone to do well. Simmo, what did you make of how this group unfolded, and in particular, Denmark's story throughout it?
Well, I think it's been covered extensively, isn't it? The Christian Eriksen story. I mean, I think we can just look now, and obviously we're in a good situation now where Chris is a lot better. He's out of hospital. He's had a pacemaker fitting. I'm not really sure what's going to happen with his football career, but even if he doesn't play, I'd say he's had a extremely impressive career. And he finishes, if he does finish his career, he finishes on a title win as well. But I think I work in medicine as well, so my only gropes were that I think the BBC should have cut to the studio quite a lot sooner. I think it was pretty. I spoke about this in length recently, and I just think it just lacked a lot of class that they didn't. I think showing Christian's wife and things like that. I think. It just left a bitter taste in my mouth. It was a very disturbing experience for everybody. I'm glad he's okay. I think the Denmark players couldn't have acted with more, courage and class. But in terms of how they're playing the football now, finishing up a 4-1 victory against Russia, they're going to play Wales now. A good Wales side, a Wales side that's having an okay tournament, but Denmark, they're going to have an extra gear, I think, because they're going to want to do it for their teammate. I think it would be an interesting match, definitely.
For sure. I think one of the best games of the group stage was probably before that Denmark-Russia one, the Denmark-Belgium game, where in extremely emotional circumstances, Denmark came out of the blocks, firing on all blocks. And Belgium, eventually, their quality showed in the second half. Kai, Belgium came top of that group with a perfect record. What did you make of their performance through the group stage, and how do you feel their chances are going into the next round?
I think on some levels, maybe more expectations, and then on other levels, surpassing expectations. I think you look at them defensively as a unit, super impressive. As individuals, less convinced about the likes of, even Vermaelen. I know it was the third game of the group, so they sort of chucked him in, but nonetheless, Alderweireld, Vertonghen, these guys seemingly past their best at club level, but it's quite impressive what Martinez has been able to do with them as a defensive unit in that regard. And I think they're quite notorious for sort of playing really, really attacking wingers as like wing backs, and again, still being quite a solid defensive unit. So as a team, they've got something going. Obviously, when you have Kevin De Bruyne on the pitch, that's a good start. When you've got Romelu Lukaku on the pitch, that's a good start. Eden Hazard, a year or two back, you likewise would have said, you put those three guys on a pitch and you're onto something. He's maybe going to still prove his worth at this tournament, which would be quite a handy thing for him as far as resurrecting his career at club level with Real Madrid, perhaps. But Lukaku, they're going to come up against Portugal in the next round, which is a very, very tasty game. And I think him and Ronaldo must be either joint top scorers at this point or something like that. So one of those two teams is going to go out, which you look at the way that the draw kind of breaks down in this tournament, and it's you could probably talk about that for a long time. It's kind of strange how some of these better teams end up facing off. So Belgium's days could be numbered just because they are ending up going up against Portugal. But I don't know, maybe Simmo, let me ask you, who do you see as favourites in that tie? Because I would have a very hard time calling it.
Well, I have Belgium to go on and win the full thing. Romelu Lukaku, top scorer. I know it's a wee bit of an outsider. My head tells me France, but it seems a wee bit boring saying that, so I've went and picked another side. I think Portugal have been highly impressive as well. You can never write off Cristiano Ronaldo. But the Portuguese side as a whole is it's a good, solid side. Diogo Jota obviously coming into a bit of good form. Obviously they've got a really strong midfield. You know, Ruben Neves, players like that. They're players that are just really, really going to be difficult to play against. But you know, I think De Bruyne, Lukaku. Even Eden Hazard's brother, Thorgan Hazard, plays for Borussia Dortmund. Is also an extremely talented player. He's typically a winger, but like you said, he's out in that sort of left wing back role. You know, doing an extremely impressive job out there. But I think for me, Belgium, this Belgian side has to go and win a trophy at some point, and I think it could be this one. I think they'll wedge Portugal, and I think they could go on and win the full thing and beat anybody on their day.
Just one quick note on Finland, I guess. They have, is it O'Shaughnessy, the famous Finnish last name? We spoke, at the beginning about Ben Brereton Diaz. I know for Scotland, which we'll get onto soon, there's Shay McAdams as well, who has found his way into the team. I think out of the three, actually, O'Shaughnessy was born in Finland. I think he's randomly got like an Irish father or something like that. But maybe what do you make taking O'Shaughnessy out of it, of the likes of Diaz? Obviously, that's at the Copa America, but someone closer to this tournament and closer to you, Simmo, in Shay Adams. What do you make of players sort of jumping on the bandwagon in time for the tournament?
I don't mind it so much. I mean, I think a really high-profile one is, America's Laporte. I mean, you think of a player like that can't get in his international side, having to switch allegiances. It seems bizarre, but it has so many good centre-backs in front of him, Kimpembe, Varane, he plays it. He just happens to, be a centre-back in a time of great centre-backs for France. He's obviously switched allegiances to Spain. I don't think he's Spanish at all. I think he might have like a Spanish, relative somewhere. But yeah, so, I don't really mind it too much, I mean, if you look, Declan Rice and Jack Grealish, they were touted for Ireland, weren't they? They played at youth level in Ireland. But yeah, I mean, Shay Adams, what's the chance he's going to get a call up at any point in his career? If he wants to come play with us, he's got a Scottish dad or a Scottish granddad. I think it's his granddad, actually. Lyndon Dykes, born in Scotland, Scottish parents, grew up in Australia. Yeah, I really don't mind, to be fair. I mean, Shay Adams is never really going to get a call up because he's not, unless he moves to a big club, which he could well do if he has a strong season. But yeah, he's playing for Southampton, There's a wee bit of snobbery in the call-ups for England, isn't there? In terms of calling up players outside the Big Six. But yeah, I think I'm okay with it personally.
Yeah, I guess if James Ward-Prowse didn't make it from Southampton, then Shay Adams wasn't going to make it. So yeah,
that's
might as well
crazy for me. By the way,
it is
crazy
wild.
For he's so underrated, James Ward-Prowse.
Just set piece delivery, in and of itself is something you might end up relying upon in the tournament at a certain point. So I agree, it's quite a strange decision. But sticking with that kind of players joining other nations into Group C, I think we would have seen Marlos represent Ukraine. So that's a nice little segue. Otherwise, I guess getting ahead to the World Cup in Qatar, I can only imagine how many players on the Qatar team we're going to be seeing from all over the place. But getting ahead of ourselves with that one. So Group C, which was the group of the Netherlands, Austria, Ukraine, as I've mentioned, and Goran Pandev's North Macedonia. Again, Simmo, the Netherlands came into this tournament off the back of, I want to say, quite a few sort of up and down years, and I think a few different managers in between as well. One player that really, really has impressed me so far, he's like turned into prime Seedorf for this tournament, is Gini Wijnaldum, showing a bit more of a cut and thrust side to his game than we might be used to at Liverpool. What have you made of the Netherlands, and what did you make of the rest of that group, Austria, Ukraine, and North Macedonia? as my dog's just going mental, so I'll mute myself.
I think the post might be here. Yeah, I think Gini Wijnaldum's having a superb tournament. I would never expect him not to have a superb tournament. He's a top-class player. I'm extremely disappointed we've lost him at Liverpool, especially on a free. Yeah, I don't think but I've seen a lot of stuff saying Liverpool are holding Gini Wijnaldum back, and that's why he's not performing that way. He's just doing a different role. He's been asked to do a different position, a different role. Okay, people ask why he's not doing that for Liverpool, but in Liverpool, he's got right now 4 attackers in front of him in some cases, but he's got sometimes at the same time Bobby Firmino, Diogo Jota, Sadio Mane, Mo Salah, and then obviously how far up the pitch Liverpool push their fullbacks. So to have another midfielder commit completely to that attack would leave Liverpool extremely open. So people are wondering why Gini Wijnaldum's allowed to go and attack so much. He's playing a different role for the Netherlands. And he's played that role before. He was a winger at Newcastle. I remember watching Gini Wijnaldum score 4 goals in one game. I can't remember who it was against, but he was a winger at one point. So he could do these sort of roles. He's having a superb tournament. He is a top-class player. He's going to be at PSG now. He'll go there, he'll win trophies, he'll play at a top level for a long, long time. I can see him playing well into his mid-30s at a really, really top level. Utter professional. I've utterly enjoyed Gini at Liverpool, and I'm happy to be watching him at a tournament because he is a top player. Another Netherlands player that I think is highly impressive is the young wing-back Dumfries. I think he's having a terrific tournament. I think he might actually get a big move after this tournament, given his good performances.
He has done well. Another one that's impressed me quite a lot is Frankie de Jong from Barcelona, who's quite a low-key player, but has these little bursts of energy where he just breaks through lines and plays a pass, and he's quite a silky sort of Laudrup kind of Cruyff type individual.
For a defensive-minded midfielder, he has such a great pass and run and late runs into the box as well. Yeah, really, really terrific. It's a reason he's at Barcelona.
Yeah.
Supremely talented youngster.
They're the type of team, Netherlands, who on their day, if all things go right for them, could really beat any team. So we'll see how things go for them. Otherwise, Yoni on the Netherlands as well. I mean, talk about failing upwards. De Boer has found himself in this position and at the Reign after atrocious spells in club football leading up to this, but is doing at the right time a good job seemingly. What do you make of the Netherlands prospects throughout the rest of this tournament?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, things didn't start out well for him at all at the Netherlands. I think they were winless in their first 5 or 6 games under him, and then started to click a little bit more. He's obviously got them in this 3 at the back system, which I know isn't universally popular, but has brought some level of success for the Netherlands under Louis van Gaal before, and now that's being reprised because frankly, their talent is stacked in certain areas of the pitch and less so in others. So they've got a sort of a litany of solid, good centre backs, which maybe if they had Van Dijk fit, they'd be more comfortable with a back 4. But without him, they're maximizing their talents there. And like you said, a couple of Rolls-Royce midfielders who are able to control and turn games at will. One of the sort of biggest throwback of a strike partnerships that I've seen at the tournament in Memphis Depay and Wout Weghorst. Little and large, big man playing off the kind of skillful little man. And they've been entertaining. They've been fun. You can't deny that. Their game against the Ukraine was maybe the first real sparky game of the tournament where you were like, okay, now we're into it. Or anything can happen here. They've obviously been one of the teams with a home advantage as well, which I'm not sure they have in the next round. So we'll see how much of their sort of how much of the good things about their performances have been down to that. But look, they've got good players who on their day can perform and be decisive against any of the teams in the competition. As you say, Wijnaldum's found this gear, which he's probably always had, but at Liverpool, played a very different role, very, very effectively. And apart from that, I kind of enjoy it's mad to think that someone like Martin Stecklenburg is their number 1 goalkeeper. I know Silison's got COVID, but it was 11 years since the 2010 World Cup, which was when he made his first appearance at the tournament. And even then it felt like he was about 30. So it's just one of those reassuring things about international tournaments, I think, when you see names where you were sure that they had no future at this level come back, and actually he's been all right for them. But from this group, I mean, I think we have to mention North Macedonia as well, Kai. Given that this was their first major tournament, obviously you've got the Goran Pandev narrative, which has sadly reached its conclusion at this level. But how did you think they fared in a group that no one really expected anything from them?
Yeah, a few of their players will have done their sort of stock no harm. Pandev is the one sort of house name almost in that side. I think they have a couple other guys maybe playing also in Italy who are decent players.
I think they have a lot of Serie B players or Serie C Serie C players as well. Go on. Yeah.
No, it's like impressive kind of how they banded together with this list of unknowns essentially to come to a major tournament and finish with 0 points, but yet still not do themselves, any disgrace along the way. So honorable mention goes to North Macedonia. But before we move on from Group C, obviously Austria and Ukraine have both gone through. Austria are going to play against Italy, and the Ukraine are going to be up against Sweden in the sort of yellow and blue battle of Europe. But who are either of these sides that finished in this group going to go through those games, or we think Austria and Ukraine are soon going to be out of this tournament, Simmo?
I think the days are numbered. I don't think anybody backs them to go all the way. On Austria, I think Marko Arnautovic's ban is up, so that kind of helps him out a wee bit. I've talked about, David Alaba trying to force his mouth shut to reduce the ban. I don't know why he was so angry at North Macedonia, but he was specifically angry at Alioski.
I think he's just an angry guy generally.
Yeah,
he just, I
don't know why David Alaba was just kind of literally trying to force his mouth shut. It was quite funny. But I don't think anybody would back those teams to go all the way super deep into the tournament. Although Austria are a fairly decent side. I mean, David Alaba is just absolutely everywhere for him. He's now moved to Real Madrid, so he's just had a trophy-laden career, and he'll continue to probably win trophies at Real. But yeah, outside that, I would say they're capable sides that probably deserve to be round about this area, but I don't think anybody's really putting their house on them going all the way.
Could any of us see Ukraine, were they to make it through one more round or even just fail in the last 16? Could that be a stepping stone for Shevchenko on the club scene? For him to, he could be the Ukraine manager for however long he wants to be. He could probably walk in the door at Dynamo Kiev and take, up the reins there if he wanted to as well. But could any of us see him moving to a more major European club after this tournament?
Well, he's got that privilege of having been a world-class player, which automatically puts you in contention whether you deserve it or not. And if Ukraine were to go further, I don't think you could sort of begrudge him a chance at somewhere where, maybe he'd be able to imprint his football at a higher level. But I don't know about you, Snow. What do you think?
He has the pass of being a world-class player. They normally get like at least one go at a top-level club. If you look at it super recently, Thierry Henry had a go at AS Monaco. Vincent Kompany recently in Anderlecht failed. Both of them failed really hard on their faces. Obviously finding out that it's very difficult to manage in any league at the top flight. And it's easy to do when you're doing our job and you're just commentating on football. I should have done this. These things are easy to comment on after the fact, but when they get into the driving seat and they're under that much pressure, and it's vastly different from being a player, isn't it? But yeah, generally top players, they get at least one shot at a big job. Frank Lampard to Chelsea, another big one. He doesn't get that job if he's not Frank Lampard. If his name is not Frank Lampard, he doesn't get that job. But he got it because he's a world-class player, and he's there. And he's probably got a shot at maybe a Dynamo Kiev would be a good one. Maybe he goes to, I don't know. I wouldn't say a Premier League, but I would probably say maybe in a Ligue 1 or something like that. Serie A, maybe one of the lower teams in there. Maybe Serie A because he had a lot of pedigree in Italy. But yeah, I mean, they all get one. They all get at least one goal, don't they?
Yeah.
Well, whether or not he enjoyed it on the pitch, he had a spell in London already, and Spurs are looking for a manager, and they've got a history with Ukrainians in as much as they signed Sergei Rebrov, so I'll call that a history with Ukrainians.
Do you know what? I wouldn't rule it out because I think they've asked just about everybody else.
Yeah.
Although surely, like, it's his turn at Milan. Thinking about it, they've got form for hiring the Ancelotti generation of players. They're working through them all. There must be some kind of road.
They are actually. It's a good point. It's a really good point.
Well, we can move to sort of Group D now, which obviously featured, well, all 4 teams represented in some way on this podcast: England, Croatia, Czech Republic, and Scotland. Simmo, a sad end for Scotland, despite moments where it looked like it might work out better. From your perspective, what were the expectations of Scotland going into this tournament, and how do you feel about how it went overall?
There was no expectations. I spoke when we qualified. I did say on a podcast, we're just happy for the day out. We're not expecting to go and win the Euros. Of course not. Our goalkeeper can't get in the team at Derby. Our right back plays for Motherwell. We're not not expecting. I think we had a lot of lapses, Judge. I think if we could have made it out the group stages, that would have been a real achievement for us. I think every Scotland supporter had that in their heads. If we could get out of the groups, that would be a real achievement for us as a nation. We got close, but we just had a couple of things go against us. Kieran Tierney being missed for the Czech Republic game. The game that we had marked down, that is the one we have to win. Kieran Tierney was missing for it. Kieran Tierney is one of the few top level players we have in the Scottish national team. Him missing it affected us so negatively. And then England went really, really well for us. And then Billy Gilmour gets our star man of that game, who plays obviously at a very top level. Or just breaking in, or just at the beginning of his career at a very top level, highly touted all over Europe, held in high regard by Thomas Tuchel and Frank Lampard. So he's impressing all his recent managers. And he goes and gets coronavirus, and he's ruled out for the Croatia game. And then we lost the Croatia game in the midfield. Luka Modric was absolutely superb. He was everywhere. He was absolutely everywhere. His passing range, his movement, his positioning. He's so intelligent as a footballer. He's world class. He's the reason he's won the Ballon d'Or and plays at the level he has at the age he is. Perisic as well. We made a mistake in that game that I spoke about where we matched Stephen O'Donnell, who's the right back at Motherwell, who plays at a particularly... he doesn't play at the level of Perisic, title-winning Perisic, whereas in the England game, we matched O'Donnell to Luke Shaw. So if he was beat, it wasn't the consequences were minimum. And we matched Scott McTominay to Raheem Sterling. Stephen O'Donnell very much got it Scott McTominay's way. But in that game, we matched Stephen O'Donnell to Perisic, which was ultimately our undoing. The first goal comes from a header from Perisic across goal to be put away. Yeah, but you can look back. If we get to another major tournament, I think people have to remember this is the first international tournament I've had stakes in my adult life. So it was different from what it normally is. Normally for us, it's just whatever country you get in the office sweepstake as the team you support.
Well, sort of sticking on that, is this, and you mentioned it with Gilmour as well, sort of paralleling the beginning of a breakthrough for him at the top level. Is this the beginning of something for Scotland in terms of major tournaments, or was this the culmination of the best players that you've got at this moment in time and sort of peaking at the right times, and that was genuinely as much as they could do?
I think we'll be back. We've got a good group of players. They're difficult to play against, and when we're playing against nations of our level. And I think, the players that are in the key areas for us are of the right age of sort of mid-20s. I think, if we swap David Marshall out, we swap Stephen O'Donnell out, it's not massive consequences for us. They are players that play at a particularly top level. Our midfield as well. We have to play Scott McTominay as a centre-back because we just don't have that depth there. Our midfield, I think, is starting to gel a little bit better than it has been. We'd struggled in midfield for quite a long time. And now I think, with Callum McGregor, John McGinn is super important to us at the minute. Billy Gilmore, if he comes into a real good bit of form, Shea Adams and Lyndon Dykes, obviously, again, just roughly at the start of their careers as well. So yeah, I think we could build on this, and I'd like to see another major tournament, and I would say the next few years would be my expectations. Now that I've had it, I want it again.
Yeah, and you listed several of the things that went against Scotland there. And also on top of that, one of the most ridiculous goals that you'll see at a major tournament, Patrick Schick scoring from basically the halfway line, which people have attributed blame to David Marshall for that. I have sympathies with him there. It's like an astonishing shot, I think, no?
Yeah, I mean, you've got to put the ball in the back of the net. It does ever so well to get the shot on target. David Marshall, to his credit, absolutely goes hell for leather to get back
He
there.
put the keeper in the net
He
as well.
shows, he has no signs of showing it slowing down, so it absolutely pelts it through the net.
Yeah. So moving south of the border to England, who finished top of the group, scoring 2 goals. There's been a lot of mixed reviews, I'd say, about each of their 3 games, really. But they are through and stand to face now Germany in the next round. Kai, what did you make of their group stage, the use of the squad, and if you can, break down their performances over the course of the tournament so far?
It's kind of like same old England. Whenever it comes time for the qualifying for the tournaments, we, win every game pretty much. And we're usually kind of more prolific than we typically are because we're playing against the likes of San Marino and Liechtenstein and stuff. So it makes sense. But we show up at a tournament with the next generation of sort of golden talent since the likes of, Beckham and Gerrard and Lampard and Scholes and stuff. This is kind of the next wave. Harry Kane's sort of at his prime time and the other guys are sort of approaching it. So it's quite an exciting tournament. And then, Gareth Southgate plays Gareth Southgate football. We play a back 5 occasionally against teams that it doesn't really seem like it's necessary to play a back 5 against. And we grind out the results just like we did in the most successful tournament that we've been to in recent years, which was the 2018 World Cup. We also sort of like ground our way past some of those opponents, the Swedens, the Colombias in the knockout stages in particular. And so in that sense, it kind of gives me hope that there is still some football for this team to play over the next few rounds and not a repeat of the last time we faced Germany at a major tournament when we were absolutely battered. Although there is VAR this time, so if we score, it'll actually count, unlike when Lampard scored against Neuer that one time. But on an individual level, there's a lot of noise around Sancho not playing. There's less noise around Rashford not playing, which I don't have an issue with because I think that Rashford is one step off of that top wavelength kind of attacking player level. He's a great player to have on the bench nonetheless. I'm excited that Saka has made his way into the team. He seems like you can't really drop him at this point for the next game, given how well he played the other day, which means that Southgate will drop him. So it's just a question of personnel. We've got all of the square pegs to put into the square holes. It's not so much Scotland's situation where your 2 best players are left backs and you have to figure it out from there. We've got a bunch of great left backs, a bunch of great right backs, a bunch of, I guess the one position that we're maybe lacking in is centre half, where you look at Harry Maguire, who's just returned to quote unquote full fitness, alongside John Stones, and is Ben White going to be in there? Are we going to play Kyle Walker in there like we sometimes do in a 3? So it's just a personnel question. I don't think that these players have kind of anything hanging over their heads like they used to in the past. We put like the penalty shootout issue to bed at the last tournament. We've shown that we can make it towards the latter stages of tournaments. So I think that mentality wise, it's there. It's just putting the right players on the pitch and the true result is going to come. If we play Germany and we lose, that's no shame. Can we beat this Germany team? Absolutely. So that's where I stand on it. And I'm, fingers crossed from, an England fan's perspective that we can make it to the quarterfinals and then, go from there. We'll see. Simmo, what about you from the inside, from the outside? Obviously, you're not too far removed from England as it is. What do you make of their chances?
I think England have a terrific squad. Slightly worried that Gareth Southgate has Like, if I was an England fan, I'd be worried that Harry Kane is maybe still keeping his position, because he's really underperformed. If his name is anything but Harry Kane, he gets dropped. He's, you know, he seems so isolated, but he's not. He has really good runners of him. He has really good passers in midfield. I think he's struggling a little bit. I think he's still carrying like injuries from the season. He seems just a yard behind. I think England fans are maybe they see this Germany side as a depleted Germany side, but it's still a Germany side. You're still going to face a midfield of Goretzka, Toni Kroos, and Gundogan. The midfielders of Bayern, Real Madrid, and Manchester City, three of the biggest clubs in the world right now, that are all competing at a top level. Those are really top players. So you have to win that battle in midfield. He's lost the battle in midfield against Scotland, and it was crucial to why he couldn't get the ball in the back of the net against Scotland, because players like John McGinn and Billy Gilmour really made it difficult for him in the middle of the park. I think, I don't know why he's not giving Sancho a run out yet. You know what I mean? Because now he's at a point, if Sancho comes on the pitch, the first minutes he's going to get are going to be against a Germany side rather than, a Czech Republic side or a Scotland side or even a, depleted Croatian side. I get that a lot of England fans are really confident going into this, but I still see this Germany side as no pushovers. I think it will be a closer match than people think.
Yeah, this confidence makes me feel not confident because it feels like Germany are most dangerous when you do slightly underestimate them. And it will be interesting to see if Gareth Southgate matches the five at the back that Germany have been choosing to play with, or if he sticks with the system that England have got a bit more used to in this tournament so far. But it's really a close kind of game, really difficult to call this one. And Germany, they've had a weird tournament. From what I saw of the Hungary game, they were not good. They struggled to break the team down, had a lot of the ball, but lacked ideas despite their quality. Were very good against Portugal and were, I think, adequate against France, against, again, a universally favoured France team. It's difficult to call, and I'm not really looking forward to any of the build-up and the kind of nationalist overtures that seems to inspire every single time. I suppose we haven't really mentioned Croatia or the Czech Republic here. Simmo, how do you fancy their chances as the tournament progresses from this point?
Croatia, again, are just they're a bit of an aging side, but they still have a lot of quality all over the pitch. Perisic and Luka Modric really the difference makers. They have Kovacic in midfield as well. He's a really capable midfielder. In terms of the Czech Republic, they have the striker Schick, who's having a really good. He's had a good season, but I think he scored 17 goals. Now he's coming into Euros. Performing extremely well, playing with a lot of confidence. He's 6'5". He's going to bully any defender he gets onto. A difficult team to play. They've not been really pushed over in this tournament. Completely pushed over in terms of maybe England had an easy time against them. But I think they're one of the sides that maybe see they can get past. Who the Czech Republic have again in the first?
They are going to be playing the Netherlands, so that should
maybe they don't get any further then. But yeah, they have a striker that's on form. You can that's one thing you can at least say. When you have a striker that's on form, then you at least have a chance, at least have a shout. Football games, they're not played on paper. A lot of people think they're played on paper, and that every time the better team wins, but it's just not the case. Upsets happen all of the time in football. And sometimes a good mid around the squad, a player that's on form could be the difference maker when it comes down to the 90 minutes. But yeah, I think Croatia and Czech Republic, I think they've got the ability to go a wee bit further in the competition.
Yeah, the Czechs, of course, have the two guys from West Ham, Soufal and Souček, and Croatia, when you've got essentially, arguably the best centre midfielder of his generation in Luka Modric, and players like Perisic, like Kovacic, other ones in there as well. And, from Eastern European teams as well, you typically get that resolve and that kind of banding together and us against the world or us against Europe, I guess, in this situation. So you never know what those two teams might be able to achieve over the next few days and weeks. moving on from Group D to Group E, which was the group of Sweden, Spain, Slovakia, and Robert Lewandowski's Poland. It's actually a group that Sweden ended up topping. Spain kind of a transitional tournament for them, I suppose, in terms of the types of players that they have available to them, led by, or technically led by Alvaro Morata, at least in terms of leading a line. I don't know how much confidence he inspires in the Spanish faithful. Quite a few high-profile misses, including a penalty that he's already missed in this tournament as well. But we spoke with Ante Kvartic from CroatianSports.com recently, who was very sort of keenly strategizing their route to the final or to success in this tournament, which was going to be finishing not top of the group because he was aware of the loophole of top plays against the group of death, and then second place comes up against the teams that are in this Sweden and Spain group, and he was pretty sort of like licking his lips at the prospect of that. But I think anyone who kind of pits themselves against Spain and thinks that they're just going to walk past them is in for a surprise. I think that they've still got a horse in this race. Simmo, what do you make of the Spanish team, where it's come from, where it is now, and what it's capable of?
I mean, it's not the team that won that was just going to win everything, is it? Back-to-back international tournaments. But you can't have that kind of generational talent forever. That the players like that aren't just going to keep popping up all over the place. In terms of leading the line, Alvaro Morata, for a player that seems to me pretty bang average, seems to spend in his entire career just moving around top level clubs in Europe, getting paid an absolute fortune to deliver, bang average seasons in terms of scoring from 3 yards out, and that's about the gist of it. It's not the Spain of old at all. There is some old Spaniards in it, but they're still a Spanish side. They still have talent led all over the pitch. They're not going to be an easy team to beat, but I don't really back them as one of the potential winners. They just aren't in my book, and me saying that will probably push them on to go and win the full thing. But I just can't see them doing it personally.
Yeah, we'll see about the Spain's exploits for the rest of the tournament. Yoni on Sweden, the team who actually did top the group, Emil Forsberg was kind of their key player throughout that. How surprised are you that they did top the group, and how much does that mean in the grand scheme of things?
I'm surprised that they topped it, in the sense that before this one would still have expected Spain to top it, despite them not being quite what they used to be. But it feels like even at the 2018 World Cup, they were building something. They had a solid base there, kind of a reliable set of players who were never going to throw a game or lose a game by a particularly large margin. They would always be in a game against whatever caliber of opposition. And now they've added to that. They've got Alexander Isak, who's probably been one of the most exciting forwards of the tournament so far, who adds that bit of spark that maybe in the last tournament they didn't have. And no one's talking about Ibrahimovic's absence, because Isak has taken on that mantle and looks like a real leading man for a side that needs their front end to be as productive as possible. So I'm surprised they finished top, but not so surprised that they were able to capitalize, I suppose, on Spain's lack of cutting edge. And I mean, this is one of the groups where the two bottom teams didn't qualify, Slovakia and Poland. Poland, it seems to me, always have a good collection of players, but always do exactly the same thing at every tournament and kind of hope that Lewandowski will do something without really working out how that happens. Kai, what did you make of, I suppose, Slovakia and Poland as two of the lesser fancy teams in this competition, but teams which at the same time were still have wanted and thought they could have gone through from this group?
Yeah, I was a bit disappointed in Slovakia, how they faded after actually a decent start. Again, considering some of the players that they do have, the likes of Skriniar, who's just won Serie A, further up the pitch, another former Serie A footballer, Marek Hamsik, who is one of those guys who at this point, it's like, oh, he's the best guy we have. Let's play him at center forward, even though he's a center midfielder. But again, needs must for the international team sometimes. But, you know, on that note, they've got some decent players. And I think that they kind of fell apart, especially obviously in the Spain game. They just got absolutely trounced. And Dubravka scored a quite impressive own goal that you would never really see again. It was actually kind of like the was it Pickford against Liverpool with the Origi thing? It was kind of similar to that in some ways. He was doing a Pickford impression, Martin Dubravka. But so Slovakia, I suppose, didn't have high expectations for them, but quietly they probably would have liked to have achieved more. As far as Poland, who actually came bottom of the group, they definitely would have been disappointed with that. Lewandowski kind of turned it on at the end, but it was a little bit too late. He also managed to miss 2 headers that were basically open goals from like a yard out within the same phase of play, which I think the commentator, which they said it right, which was, if there was one player on the planet, forget Europe, forget Poland, that you would want in that situation, it would probably be Robert Lewandowski. So it's a good thing that people weren't making bets on that in that moment. But I think we'll leave Group E there with Sweden and Spain, the 2 teams who are moving on. And Yoni, that brings us to Group F, the final group.
Yeah, Group F, the group of death. Although I'm not sure if it can be a group of death if 3 of the teams were going to qualify. But the teams were France, Germany, Portugal, and Hungary, finishing in that order. We're speaking the day after maybe the most exciting night of the tournament so far. I think the standings within that group changed about 5 times within the course of play. Simmo, I suppose anything could have happened in this group. Anyone could have finished top, fine margins and all that. But we'll start with France, who did. Are they right to be most people's favourites?
Yes, they have the best team. They have the best collection of players, the best squad depth in the tournament as well. It's no surprise a lot of people are just backing them to go and win it. They just have a tremendous side, and of course they have the most exciting young footballer in the world, Kylian Mbappe, as part of the side, and it just. It screams of France going on to do the double and win the World Cup and then go on and win the Euros. But, I'm still backing Belgium to go and do something because I just think the Belgian team's too good as it is now to not win something in this sort of generation they've got. But yeah, the group was just mental, wasn't it? And a lot of people were like, oh my God, either one of these teams is going to go out and the group's going to be super exciting. But then I think people kind of realised the 3rd place qualification in terms of like it's almost not worth having the group stages to get rid of 2 teams or something.
yeah, exactly.
But it is what it is. It went very much. Even though it was really unpredictable, I think it went very much the way you probably would have thought it would have, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think most people probably would have thought those 3 teams will somehow, in some order, get through at Hungary's expense. But Hungary, Kai...
did themselves justice.
Yeah, they did, and gave a much, I think, without meaning to sound patronizing, better account of themselves than most people would have expected in front of, in fairness, a capacity crowd. And maybe we can talk about that as well in another way. But first of all, on the football side of things, Kai, Hungary were maybe unfortunate not to go through.
Yeah, I think that if their goalkeeper had worn sweatpants like the legendary Gabor Kirai, then that might have been some good fortune for them. I was disappointed not to see that. Otherwise, no. Obviously, they've overachieved in many ways, despite finishing bottom of the group. Just in terms of their performances, they got a draw off of France. If that's the team that goes on to win the tournament, they'll be able to say that they didn't lose to them. They got another draw against Germany, another quite impressive result for them. And so, you could hardly name a single player from their side. What is it? The forward Adam Szalai has been around for a while. Randomly, actually, I think in his very early days of his career was a Real Madrid player, which seems weird. I guess maybe Puskás, following in his footsteps as far as a Hungarian to play over there. But it's a nice story for teams like that to come to these tournaments. And again, with the North Macedonia kind of like same vein of, if any of the fans traveled, that's going to be some memories for them to keep for the rest of their lives. So
I think the Hungarian players are going home with some cool shots, aren't they?
Exactly.
With the shot swaps at the end of the game. They've got some
Germany, France, and Portugal. Exactly. Yeah. Someone's got Ronaldo, someone's got Mbappe, someone's got, I don't know if it's Thomas Müller or whoever, Gnabry, whoever you want from Germany. So that's a good point. Yeah, they will have enjoyed it. And a couple of them might end up getting moves off the back of it. Is it Orban, the center back who plays for Leipzig, is a decent player? Did Szoboszlai play?
He was injured. He was injured for the tournament. And maybe one of the big question marks for them will be if he had been fit, maybe they would have had that extra bit of quality and creativity to actually do something a bit more against France, or, you know, hold on to their lead against Germany. The one thing we haven't mentioned at all yet really is Portugal and the eternal Cristiano Ronaldo, who is, I think, top scorer in the tournament so far. Simmo, they have perhaps, in terms of quality, their best squad since the golden generation of 2004, 2006 era. Perhaps not the most exciting, though, in terms of the way they play. How do you think their trajectory in the tournament will go from here? I mean, you've backed Belgium to win, so I guess it's ending pretty soon.
I think with a counter-attacking ability, they could do over a couple of teams. They could even do over Belgium, to be honest. I think that counter-attacking goal they did against France, where they moved the ball from like one end of the pitch in just a matter of seconds, put it in the back of the net with some absolutely glorious passing. That team is, the spine of it is extremely talented. It probably is the best Portugal side since, you know, days of Luis Figo and players like that. And Cristiano Ronaldo at this point, I'm sure, was at some point in his career just replaced with a cyborg that's just programmed to play football. He's unreal. He is eternal. I can see him, you know, at Euros 2030 at this rate. Probably. He's now the top scorer of the Euros ever, top scorer of international tournaments ever. You know, he's insane. He's insane. He's an insane player. Held in just a different regard to you know, most other players. And when they have him, they always have a chance, I think, of doing over any side. And yeah, they do have a lot of players that are tremendously well suited to counter attacking. So when they do come against these better sides that are going to come at them, they have the ability to do that. Hence why they were able to get something out of France.
Yeah, Ronaldo, I think, beyond all of those accolades, is approaching becoming the highest scoring international footballer of all time outside of tournaments, whatever you call it. So just more records sort of falling his way. You look at the types of players that they're able to leave out of their starting 11. João Felix, like the most expensive teenager of all time, probably, and other players as well. You know, you can only put probably a Bernardo Silva, a Jota, and a Ronaldo out there, and then, you know, you're having to forego some of these other top talents in attacking departments. So it's quite impressive and kind of envious of the kind of like England, to be honest with you, in an attacking sense. Although maybe I'm doing us too much giving us too much credit like that. But yeah,
no, I think it's definitely comparable. You know, you look at João Felix, you look at, you know, Jadon Sancho, the like, young players that are held in super high regard, still struggling to get into the side. You know, I would say it is comparable. I would say they probably need Bernardo Silva for the outball, and maybe that's why João Felix is very much that centre forward. And to take him out, the player you need to replace him with would probably be Cristiano Ronaldo, and that's why he's maybe not getting on the pitch.
One guy who you're not gonna take out of the team for a second, it's gonna be him. And obviously, despite them being the reigning champions, Ronaldo's final 4 or 5 years ago at this point was curtailed by, I think, a Dimitri Payet tackle, and so he wasn't on the pitch for the success. So he'll, in his mind, have some unfinished business. And yeah, if there's one player who you don't want to come up against when he has even more sort of reason to produce the goods, it's going to be him. So Belgium versus Portugal, arguably the tie of the next round, along with England versus Germany, as far as these games to look out for. As far as looking back, though, on the group, as we have done, we just want to finish real quick with some awards. And so I'll just ask you guys each for first your most impressive team so far. I'll start with Simmo.
My most impressive team so far is Italy. Highly impressed with the way they're going about their football. I could really see them being a danger and go deep into this competition.
Yoni, do you agree with that?
Yeah, I'd have to say the same. They've made lightest work of any team of their group. And I'm excited and intrigued to see what they do next against higher caliber opposition too.
All right, I'll stick with you, Yoni, for the next one, and then we'll bounce back to Simmo. The biggest flop as far as...
Well, I mean, given how much I hyped them, I have to go with Turkey because they, I think, were objectively the worst team in the group stage. And my expectations were a lot higher. And I'm sure they'll be back at a major tournament soon, and we'll build them up again. But they really were just completely disjointed. And I don't really know what they were trying to do. I think that's the thing. I have no concept of what they were aiming to do, how they were aiming to play, beyond just lumping it up to Yilmaz and hoping something stuck.
Yeah, good players, Soyuncu and Demiral at the back, and some players who've just won Ligue 1 with Lille, as well as Çalhanoğlu. I'm not even going to try to say it a third time. Çalhanoğlu. There we go. So yeah, you would have thought that they could have mustered some more. Simmo, who were your most disappointing team?
I have to agree with everything Yoni's just said there. Very much back to the drawing board for Turkey. They really have to go and have a look. And come on to maybe the next tournament to turn up to with a better plan and maybe play a little bit more conservatively as well, in terms of trying to not be the worst team in the tournament.
Yeah, it's a good start when you're sort of getting beyond that point. Otherwise, I guess we might have been able to call Italy this next category as well, but I think at this point they're probably no longer dark horses in the same way that they were heading into the tournament. So, Simmo, is there a new dark horse that's emerged?
I'm going to say Denmark, just because a team that's suffered a wee bit of a travesty. They have it all to play for. I think they want to play with no fear at all. I think they want to play with freedom. And I would say, yeah, they're my little dark horse, and I think maybe this could push them on to really, really do well in this competition.
Yeah, we'll see if the momentum sort of sticks with them at this point. Yoni, the dark horses?
Denmark certainly have the will of the people behind them, and I could easily go for them. We're going to stay in Scandinavia and say Sweden because they are on what looks like a slightly easier side of the draw as well. And I think they'll get past Ukraine, and then after that, they'll play the winner of England versus Germany, who I think, whichever one that is, will have a really tough time breaking them down. They look set up for tournament football, and I think they might still surprise a few people.
I'm sure, yeah, the Swedes will be hoping that that's the case. Then, Yanni, I'll stick with you again. As far as an individual player whose stock has risen the most so far.
I'm going to stick in Sweden again, and I suppose you could go for either Isaac or Forsberg, but I've mentioned Isaac already. Forsberg is a player who's an interesting one because he has been playing at a high level for a while. He's been in the Leipzig squad, hasn't necessarily been their star man or even been sort of in their first 11 in the big Champions League games. But he's a highly gifted player. He's Sweden's spark. And I wouldn't be surprised if on the back of this tournament, there were rumors linking him to even bigger clubs in Europe than Leipzig. And whoever would get him would have a very highly skilled and hardworking player. And a midfielder who seems like they can cope with the physical demands of any league. So interesting to see how that develops.
Yeah, it's like the second coming of Emil Forsberg. I think he originally peaked probably at the same time as Naby Keita with that Leipzig side a few years back. And then Keita was the one who ended up getting a big move. And the less said about that, I'm sure probably as far as Simmo is concerned is the better. But Simmo, who's the player for you that's stock has risen the most?
For me, it has to be Schick of the Czech Republic, just because he is a big physical striker. He's a bit of a baller. You know, he put it in the back of the net from the halfway line. I think he could really, really suit a Premier League side. You know, maybe not a top side that really want to play with the ball along the floor, but I think, you know, if you think of a side that's going to want to really have a bit of physicality up front, I think, you know, a move to the Premier League, he could actually succeed and do well.
Maybe if Harry Kane is on the move, we might see Shevchenko and Schick rock up at Tottenham next season.
That would be something.
Otherwise, I think that's about as much time as we have for today. So I want to say thanks to my co-host for today, Yoni, and then a very special thank you from both of us to James Simpson for joining us. Simmo, we hope that you've enjoyed being our guest, and how can the listeners best follow you and everything that you're up to these days?
I have very much enjoyed being on here. I'm very much sorry for my internet issues. I have no idea what's going on for my Wi-Fi. You can find me at Total Screamers on Twitter or at Simmo TSP on Twitter. I also do a podcast called Valecast with my football club that I work at, Devon Vale, who play at the 5th tier in Scottish football. Give us a check out if you fancy it. Every bit of Highland League football. But on that, yeah, thanks very much for having me on, guys.
Thanks again, Simmo. The pleasure was all ours, and best of luck to Devon Vale for the next season coming up. As far as our listeners and viewers, we hope that you enjoyed this podcast. If you did, please do follow or subscribe wherever it is that you found us. We're United Mates Football Podcast on all your favorite podcast streaming platforms. Same name on YouTube, where you can put some faces to these voices. And then on social media, it's at United Mates FP across Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And then the website is unitedmatesfp.com, where you can find all of the above content in one place, plus some awesome articles as well that Yoni has written himself, and the likes of myself and Joe have a stab at those occasionally. Until next time, everyone, though, take care of yourselves and take care of each other. Goodbye.